Tonight, our guest speaker is Brent Sullivan. He's a mechanical engineer with Northwest Aerospace Technologies. I was going to have name plates up here. I'll have to do that for the next one. Daniel Stephenson, Assistant Director of Facilities Services here at MSU, and Emily Davis. She's the Production Engineer and Supervisor, and she's probably roasting for Joe Health Corporation, Smith Equipment. I'm not sure what you actually buy. And Robert Kincaid, Product Development Lead for Blackhawk. So, guys, have a seat. And we'll get started. Y'all could just start by introducing yourselves, tell us about yourselves.
I'll stand, if that's okay with everyone. I'm Brent Sullivan. As was stated, I'm a mechanical design engineer at Northwest Aerospace Technologies in Belgrade. The parent company is out of Everett, Washington. We retrofit, we're responsible for the engineering for retrofitting commercial airplanes. I graduated from MSU in mechanical engineering technology in 2001. Went to work for a small aerospace company in Seattle called Boeing. And I spent about 10 years there. I got hired in as a manufacturing engineer. I was an assembly and installation manufacturing engineer. And my responsibilities were basically systems integration and also working with planners on coming up with installation instructions for the airplanes. I took a year educational leave of absence in that 10 years and went and got my MBA from University of Montana. Also worked a little bit there doing some mechanical design for ocean sensors, and I also designed roofing trusses. Went back to Boeing and then got the opportunity to come back home to Bozeman for Northwest Aerospace. I think that pretty much summarizes it.
I'm Emily Davis. I'm going to sit if everyone's okay with that. I graduated from MSU in 2004 with a degree in mechanical engineering technology. I also had a minor in French, so don't let them tell you can't do a language and an engineering degree at the same time as possible. After I graduated, I went out to Boston, Massachusetts, thought there'd be more job opportunities there, and there were. I interviewed with several companies. I got offers from a couple. I eventually took a job with a company called Kazakh Composites. They specialize in the design of composite structures and the manufacturing process called pultrusion for composite structures. The majority of their work came through what's called SBIRs, or Small Business Innovative Research Grants. It's basically small business contracts through the Department of Defense. So while I was there for about 3 years. I got to do a lot of projects for the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, really, really interesting stuff, armor for soldiers, unmanned aerial vehicle wings, among other things. It was what I consider a true MET job to be. It was 50% at my desk and 50% out in the shop building prototypes, testing prototypes, and getting my hands dirty. I really enjoyed it, and I had an opportunity to move back to Belgrade, which I couldn't turn down. So I moved back here, but I wasn't ready to leave Kazakh yet, so I negotiated with them to stay on as a consultant. Technically, I don't really do engineering work for them. What I do is manage their proposal writing process. Every engineer within the company has to write proposals, which, as you can imagine, they hate doing. So I just kind of harass them with emails, keep them on track. I edit every technical proposal that goes out of Kazakh, which means I get to read a lot of really interesting, cutting-edge technology proposals. A lot of military contracts still, so really interesting stuff going out. I don't do much of that. It's really part-time, small stuff, but it keeps me in contact with people back there. And I like to point that out because it's one other avenue of engineering that people can take if you don't get a strictly engineering job. Technical writing is pretty interesting. When I moved back to Belgrade, though, I took a job full-time with TowHaul. I'm the production engineering supervisor at TowHaul. I manage a team of 2 other engineers. TowHaul is a company that designs and manufactures off-road trailers to haul mining equipment in open pit mines. We make the largest off-road trailers in the world, and the largest tow hooks in the world. Their capacity ranges from 120 tons up to 600 tons. The two other engineers on my team do the low boys. They trade off, they kind of take turns doing low boys, and I'm responsible for the gooseneck and all of the truck components, so everything that is used to tow disabled haul trucks. It's really, really interesting work. I toured tow haul while I was a student here, and I've always wanted to work there, so I feel pretty lucky to be working there now. We have our manufacturing shop right there in the building, so I wander down, I talk to the guys. We have some amazing welders out in the shop. You can see what they're doing. It's not as much hands-on stuff as I used to do, but I still really enjoy it, and I do get to go to the mine sites every now and again, measure equipment, climb all over it, take a look at it, see how they use our stuff. It's really neat work, and I really like it, so that's kind of what I do.
Cool. Hi, I'm Dan Stephenson. I'm a graduate of the MET program 1992, so mine makes me about at least a decade older than everybody else here. About a decade older, here. Well, yeah, not you. I'm not a decade older than you. I actually was here when Kevin Cook came here to teach his first year. That's right. How many of you are? How many of you are freshmen? You raise your hand. Sophomores? Juniors? And seniors? Okay. All right. Well, this helps me a little bit to know where you're at, and I'm gonna go back a little bit further, and because I think it might help you to relate to what mechanical engineering technology is, why I chose to go into it, and some of you might be able to relate to that or not. I'm a native of Bridger, Montana, a little town down by Red Lodge. Raised on a sheep and cattle ranch. Was kind of the kid that ended up being the mechanic on the place, and so I was always fond of doing mechanically inclined things. And from that, I ended up going to school to be a airframe and power plant mechanic, which is an aviation mechanic basically. And in the process of going to vocational school to do that, one of my instructors there really encouraged me to keep my education moving, so I did that, and I came directly from Helena, the Votech, to Bozeman to begin my schooling here in 1988. And at the time, I worked. I was a licensed airframe and power plant mechanic, so I worked at the airport, and I worked my way through school here, and it was a really unique way to do that because, again, I liked being in a theory, but also in practice with everything that I did. And the intent was when I got out of school, I was going to head out to Seattle and work for probably a little aviation company out there. And but I got into the ME program actually. I started in the ME program. And I found that I had a lot of interest in heat transfer, thermodynamics, energy, basically. And so I found that I had a lot of interest in that, but I didn't have that much interest in only dwelling in the theoretical. And an old gentleman that I'm nearly sure nobody in the room would remember, named A.K. Laporte, who was a hand drafting teacher here. That's right, they taught hand drafting at that time. Said, you know what, Dan, you really need to look at the MET program. Called it Mech Tech back then, but Mechanical Engineering Technology. And so I did. And I looked at what that program was about, and I said, that really does feel more like me, so I transferred. Frankly, I wondered a little bit if I made the right decision or not for a while. At the time, and I don't know what it's like now, but there was some little bit of back and forth between the ME and MET program that at the time was not really adversarial, but there's just it made me doubt whether I made the right decision. Well, I stuck with it. I graduated in '92, but by that time I had decided that I was no longer really interested in going down the aviation route. So, and I was very interested in energy. Energy is a kind of a macro issue. And so I interned for a couple of years with Conoco, And on my way out of school, I also wanted to stay in Montana. So I began looking at my options to work in energy in Montana. And I was lucky enough to be hired by a firm called CTA Architects Engineers. It's a local, at that time it was a Billings-based architecture and engineering firm, about 45 people. So I started with them. My very first job that I worked on the design of was the engineering physical science building here on campus. So don't blame me, I was just a draftsman. But I really fell in love with the issues that surround buildings. And I began to understand that the energy issues in buildings are a lot of the energy issues that I feel are important to the world, and they're definitely the energy issues that you people of your age are going to get to handle. So I stuck with CTA, was there for nearly 18 years, started at 45 people. It went up to about 450 people. And in the process, I was able to become to work through the steps of ownership. And so I was actually, when I left the firm, I was what they call a principal owner of the firm, and had been that for about, 11 years, I guess. And so I worked my way up through the technical management side of the company, technical engineering and design side, into management. In the process, I worked from, I started working in healthcare engineering. So I worked on the design and retrofit of hospitals of all sizes. And I went from there into my true energy again, energy. And so I was lucky enough to be able to form a market in, I'd call it non-conventional and renewable energy strategies. And so I did that for the latter half of my career, and did a lot of work with biomass energy. I worked in the Intermountain Northwest up into Alaska quite a lot, designing and constructing biomass plants. Those are heating plants that basically use forest waste. And so I really, really enjoyed that. Got to help the U.S. Coast Guard put a program together. I got to help the Forest Service implement the first nationwide biomass program. That was really satisfying work. Frankly, I probably never would have left the private sector if I could have done that all the time. But there was this whole other side of my business that I just didn't agree with. And if you can't have agreement with the way that your life and your profession is going, that's a good time to think about changing where you're at. So I did. 2 years ago, the position of assistant director here at MSU came available. And that position is really the engineering side operations director of the university. So I manage the energy and utility systems here on campus. Absolutely love my job. I absolutely love it. I haven't worked this hard for this little money for a long time. But it's like having my own little city about the size of Kalispell that we are able to consider how we do energy here. And so we are looking and planning a variety of really innovative approaches to how we provide power, heating, and cooling to our buildings that will dramatically increase the efficiency of our energy cycles and implement renewable strategies into those cycles. All of this geared toward being better stewards to the people's resources and dramatically reducing the carbon footprint of this place. So, and I feel strongly that what we do here in a public land grant setting needs to set the pace for the rest of the world. And that's why I'm here. Because I at some point, you get a little older, maybe it's a midlife crisis, I don't know. But you decide that you need to live what you talk. And ask the big questions, live your life with purpose. It's not just about money. So if I had any advice for you guys and ladies at this point, do that. I mean, whatever it is you choose to pursue, make sure it has something to do with your passion and your principles. Otherwise, you'll just be a miserable, crusty old person someday. So anyhow, that's how I got to where I'm at. I guess to step back, there are some important things to consider in your professional development if you go into MET. And one of those is, are you going to go into a field where you need to have professional licensure or not? Do you want to become a professional engineer? That's a question that a lot of people ask themselves early, and if you're going to take a career path that doesn't require that you get a license, some folks won't do that. I believe you're required to take the fundamentals of engineering test, right? Is that right? No. So absolutely take that one, because if you're out of school for 10 years and you try to take that test, you're going to have a heck of a time. I've had friends who've put themselves in that position. But then if you are able to gain your professional engineer's license, it can only benefit you in the long term. So something to think about. Okay, thanks.
I'm Robert Kincaid. I am the new product development lead at Blackhawk. We're a division of ATK, which is a huge company. I'm still getting used to that. We got bought out about a year and a half ago. So that's also another exciting part of the corporate life, is seeing how companies merge and other companies take over smaller companies and what that does to change the environment of the company. But basically, I have kind of a dual role. I manage both people and projects, and I get to do a little bit of the work also. But for the most part, what I'm doing is making sure all of the new product development that gets assigned to our facility stays on task, and we're getting stuff out. Kind of my background is I graduated from MET in 2007. I started in '97 as an ME student, and during that I ended up getting an evening job updating technical drawings for Butler Creek. They used to be out in Belgrade, and that changed into a full-time position doing design work. And then they left, and I ended up working for Blackhawk when they moved into the valley. So kind of the day-to-day things that I take care of is a lot of project management, a lot of time management stuff. And that's one thing that I wish, if I could go back, I would concentrate a whole lot more on, is being able to take a project, estimate how long it's going to take, and then be able to create milestones and keep things on track and just manage that whole process. That's probably the number one thing that I'm asked to do, is manage time and manage other people's time. What else? If you don't know what Blackhawk does, we design tactical gear. We're mainly a tactical military. We've branched out into the commercial products some. The facility I work at is unique to a lot of places. It's similar to tow haul in that we do everything. We start with a concept. We do the design, the prototyping, the testing, the tooling to create it for injection molding, mold the parts, assemble the parts, package them, and then ship them. So it's very interesting to be part of the whole part of the design. A lot of times you end up with a design process that you design a part and you never really, you get to see a finished part, but you're not part of the whole process, and you're kind of handing it off to somebody else. Or we never really hand it off. We're in charge of the project from birth to grave. So it's been very exciting.
Thank you. I think now is a good time to open it up for questions and answers. I'm sure you guys all have a lot of questions.
Alliant Tech Systems. They're I think they have close to 13,000 or 14,000 employees, and involved in that is we have aerospace, a space part of the company. We have the munitions part, which does missile systems and munitions factories for the government. Then we have the smaller part, which is the accessories division, and the sporting and security division, which has accessories and ammunition, which is federal, cartridge, CCI. We have Weaver scopes, RCBS, Stony Point, I think Stony Point bipods. I'm still trying to get used to all the different names. There's just this huge company. They're in 26 states, which at first I didn't quite know how I was going to like being part of a big company like that. But from being part of Blackhawk, it was a good sized company, but I had almost capped out from where I could advance in the company. For me to advance any further, someone was going to have to retire. In ATK, now I'm basically at the bottom, looking at the longevity and how long people are there and where the different positions are. And so there's just a lot of room to advance up and a lot of neat projects coming through.
Questions from the audience? For any of them about anything?
Does Blackhawk have actual, like just through your sector, DoD contracts? Or are you guys just making stuff
We do.
for people to buy outright?
We have contracts that we've had. Most of our contracts have been European, but we did just get one with the Marine Corps for a holster system. But most of them have been with Germany and some of the, I think Columbia National Police was another big one. So, which is another interesting part of it because when you deal with a foreign country, there's a whole bunch of other regulations, and you end up having to write specs and different prints that are in another language, so they'll have their import stuff. So and the whole contract and bidding process is very unique in some countries.
How large is Blackhawk here, the facility here, like for employees?
We have right about 100 employees right now. When I started, there were 3. So it's grown a lot.
What about the sizes of these two in here?
After you.
Toll Hall just broke the 50-person mark. We're about 56, I believe. We're growing.
And how many engineers?
The engineering staff is at, I think, 8 right now. We just hired a new one.
Our Belgrade office is about 20, and the full NAT is about 150.
What is the main difference between mechanical engineering technology and mechanical engineering?
I'll take that one. I've done both ways on that one. I've had to describe that to people who have never heard of it. When I went for a job in Boston, I was competing against kids from MIT. An ME degree was really all they knew. MET was something I had to describe. And then I've recently had job reviews at my company where they try to tell me what the difference is and pigeonhole me based on that. But the way I've always described it to people is a lot like he was saying, it's theory versus practical use. Mechanical engineers deal a lot with the theory behind design that you'll find in their curriculum. For those of you that are freshmen, they take a lot more math and physics. They'll take the upper level courses. METs focus on the practicality of design. They focus on, is this buildable? Is this actually something we can manufacture? One of the best descriptions I've heard of it too is MET is a go-between between the manufacturing staff and the engineers. So they speak the language of the engineers, they can do the design, they know the theory, but they don't drive the theory and they don't really work in the theory. They work with the manufacturers and they speak the manufacturer's language. So your courses have a lot of welding and machining involved in that. I have to say, working at Toll Hall, I came into a situation where I think they had just had MEs for a long time, and the manufacturing staff did not have a great opinion of engineers. They still like to give us a really hard time. But I like to think that since I've been hired and since I've brought on another MET, they're really starting to appreciate and value that we can talk to them, and we seem to understand the feasibility of our design. And I find that the METs have no trouble walking into a mine site and talking with the guys who work at a mine site, whereas some of the MEs will walk in and they just give off that vibe, that engineer vibe, and it kind of creates a barrier between the guys who actually run the equipment and the guys trying to design the equipment. So that's my experience with it.
How is it for you having both an ME and an MET degree?
I only have an MET degree.
Oh, okay. What was the year that you had a ME? You got like an MEA or something?
MBA
Oh,
from University of Montana. What is like it? Pretty much my experience is the same. It's hands-on and theoretical. You have the theoretical base, you have hands-on base. you can do 50% in an office environment, 50% hands-on. That's pretty much been my career. I can sit down at CAD machine and design and then go out to the factory and see it. And there's been varying scopes of that throughout my careers, small companies or corporations. How hands-on we can go.
Using the knowledge of the local Montana in general, what is the prospects for future METs as far as job-wise? How is it going up? Is it pretty much staying steady, or is it falling?
Dr. Cook?
Want me to answer that one? Which I would be interested in hearing from an industry.
I don't know for sure, but I believe that there is definitely an entrepreneurial spirit in Montana, and with an MET degree, that would provide you lots of job opportunities. There's also some larger companies coming here. You know, we have Northwest Aerospace Technologies out of Seattle. Boeing just bought a facility over in Helena about 6 months ago. They manufacture titanium. That's right in the MET field, machine shop for titanium fabrication. So I'd say the prospects are great anywhere for engineering at this time. I mean, this is just a great place to be. If you enjoy doing it, you can make a good career in engineering.
I'd echo that. I think that if you have a successful track record getting any engineering degree at right now at this point in history, you're gonna have success in finding a position. The world, whether it's manufacturing, energy, infrastructure, there's a lot of need for engineering talent in all fields right now.
From what I've seen, I know that our company's growing. Our local division, where they're building us a new building, which is over 4 times the size of what we're in now. And we don't know what's going to happen in the future, of course, but if a company's going to build us a building that size, I know they're going to try to fill it. They don't have buildings that they just have half empty. So that's going to include manufacturing engineering, design engineering, testing. There's just a whole bunch of engineering that goes into that. And the other thing that I've noticed a lot in our industry is there is a huge push for American manufacturing. Parts that are made in America, especially in the military and law enforcement fields. We're constantly being asked to quote to build tools so we can mold the parts at our facility and get it back in the U.S., get the tool from China and bring it back to the U.S. to mold parts, just so that it can be said it's American made.
In regards to what you just said, is that for domestic demand for products or just simply government?
It's both. It's in the commercial. A lot of the stuff I deal with is commercial. Like the stuff you go to Sportsman's Warehouse and buy, or Bob Ward's. A lot of that people are really wanting to have that American-made part because there's been that push that, okay, there's all these cheap parts out there, but they want something made in America. They don't want to go and buy something that's made in China.
Do you foresee with your new building coming up and then also recently being bought by a large company that you guys will have kind of a local ability to hire and fill that building locally?
From what I can see, I think that we are going to see more positions. It's always budget year to budget year, but from what I've been hearing, it's nothing but a growth for our division in general. They're pushing the accessories division a lot right now.
Is there internship opportunities through Blackhawk?
Yes, I have an intern. We've been lucky lately. We've been able to fill it internally. We've had people come on and work swing shift and graveyard shift that want to pursue the engineering, and they're getting their engineering degree, and so we've been able to fill it internally. But I've had an intern, I think, every summer since, I want to say, 2008. So.
What about your internship?
We've always had at least one intern from MSU, and generally they've gone on, I think they've all gone on to be full-time employees or in the process of doing so. I push that pretty hard too.
All of my designers have been interns, turned out.
working full-time.
We had one. I've only been there for a year.
We are working right now with College of Engineering to see if we can start having some engineering interns. In the past, it's been more on the architecture side, but we will be offering interns in the future. Internships.
And on the opposite of the trying to get it all in the U.S., is there much push in the engineering field for having multilingual or like exterior mobility? Yeah.
My boss
Like
right now is
international.
abroad, overseas, at factories, sourcing stuff.
Yeah, TOHO has units in, I think, 15 countries around the world. So we do a lot of travel to other countries. We have one other engineer who got her, she got a double major in mechanical engineering and Spanish, and she takes care of a lot of the Spanish translation for us. Our parts manuals, our ops manuals, things like that. It's given her a little bit of a niche in the company. She's making herself invaluable pretty quickly as a president.
For sure. Boeing is obviously a global company. Company that I'm with right now, we are responsible for the engineering, but we need to do on-site support for the modifications. Our current modification is in Hong Kong, so, and it can be anywhere.
I have a question. So I guess looking back when you guys were baby engineers, did you notice a salary discrepancy between your peers having an ME and an MET, and then as time marches on, has that discrepancy, if there ever was one, has it evened out? Has it sort of people gone on their way and kind of can't really compare the numbers anymore? Or how does it look after 10, 15 years in the industry?
I personally never saw it. Boeing was a great company. They treated everybody pretty fairly, great benefits, and now same thing. I feel I've been compensated throughout my career. You could maybe argue some niche engineering, like stress analysis engineering, is a very niche area that tend to make a little bit more than some of the other mechanical engineering technology degrees, but I think for the most part, I think comparable.
I can't speak to numbers specifically. I actually had a bad experience when I was an intern once revealing salary figures with a coworker, and I don't go into that anymore with people. But in terms of opportunities for growth within a company, becoming a project manager or a manager of people, I've seen no difference. They've been moving MVTs up just as well as the MEs, giving me just as many opportunities.
In my experience, once you're out of school, land your first job and prove yourself, it's wide open from there. Once you do that, in the industry that I grew up in, you're very much on the same playing level. Where the differentiator came in for me, and I believe really exists, it's if you choose to go a professional engineer route with your career, or if you choose to go more of a non-registered route, a designer route or a technician route, you may eventually see a difference in the pay. But again, that varies a lot with industries, I believe.
Does your office have those figures for like the average for Montana for just getting out of school?
We do, and I have some of those figures here. Our career survey that we do is recent graduates. So we have like the entry level, what they start out at. So we have that information. We don't have, unfortunately at this point, we don't have beyond that.
I believe ASME.
We have some of that
Yeah.
information too. We kept track of that, and I'm just going to throw my two bits in here. My experience, and I've been here for a long time now, is that they do not distinguish most places between the MET and the ME degree as far as starting salaries, or it's not much. From our experience at MSU, now nationally, the national data is different. I think that they do have a pretty significant gap that they'll say that they have. I've never seen it. And then everybody says up here, once you're beyond that first job in an industry, it kind of disappears because you can do what you can do, and they'll pay you for that.
I think it is beneficial to really learn that difference between ME and MET. If you stick with MET, learn to describe it and learn to discuss the strengths and benefits of being an MET, especially if you're going to get outside your comfort zone, get outside of the place like Boeing knows METs. They know what they want them, and they're all set and good with that. But like I said, going to Boston, they had never encountered an MET before. Every job interview I went into, I had to describe it. And you have to be careful because they hear technology and they think 2-year tech degree. So you have to be real careful to explain the difference and sell yourself. So learn the difference and be prepared to describe it and discuss it.
I was curious with regards to the finding a job in a field that you're passionate about and one that has the same values. In looking for jobs right now, it seems like a lot of those positions require 3 to 5 years experience. And how would you get your foot in the door in an industry which you're interested in, but there's not many entry-level openings listed?
First of all, when you're in school, absolutely get internship experience, preferably in the area that you want to go into. But any internship experience is applicable, really. And in my case, I interned for 2 years before I got out, and that helped me tremendously in a bad job market. Finding a area that I really wanted to pursue, and yeah, I think a lot of positions are looking for 3 to 5 year, but entry-level positions are out there. You have to look for them, and don't just depend on what you see in the paper or what you see on job search sites. Go find the people that you want, or the companies that you want to work for, and actively pursue them. That's what I did. There was no job available when I pursued my company. I found the one company that I wanted to work for, and I actively pursued them, and they made a position. So, kind of a non-conventional approach, but works sometimes.
Especially in a tough market, companies are still going to need people, and there's still going to be people leaving positions, but they're not going to be actively looking for people as hard. They're not going to have the positions open. And for the most part, well, all of my job opportunities have come through connections. So networking is critical. And if there's somebody up on campus, one of the professors who has the same passion for that particular design or whatever field, they're a great resource to get into that, to know the companies and to get into that field.
Some of what I've seen is with that, have people's skills, networking, interview regularly, be comfortable with it. A lot of the times, the company already knows that you have the skills or the ability to learn those skills because you have an engineering degree. A lot of it's going to be if you fit with them, if they like you, if you're going after the company and talking with people within it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to second that on the networking. When I started, I thought networking was just for the business grads. My dad was in sales, and he kept saying network, 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 and I thought it's not how it is in engineering, but it is. It's how it is in every business. Don't be afraid to talk to people and ask people for favors and ask people to get your foot in the door. It really is how business is done. I'd also like to say, make use of career services. Hall gets a lot of applications from graduating seniors here, and I have to say, some of them are so terrible. The resumes and the cover letters, you guys. I know we're not all, English majors in here, but you guys should at least be able to put a resume in the cover. I've emailed Kevin several times. I've written back to some of the students to say, submit this to career services and then come back and talk to us. I do technical writing, so I'm admittedly extra critical, but my boss is leaps and bounds beyond me, and he'll chuck a resume that has spelling errors. You won't even look at it. So it doesn't matter if you have your internships. It doesn't matter what cool projects you did for the different groups here on campus. Get your resume in order and use career services. It will really help you. At least that initial impression, it means a lot.
used to interviewing. Interviews are
Yeah.
one of the only times the company can see you, and if you have a hard time interviewing and you can't express how you can solve problems, because that when you boil down engineering, engineering is solving problems, and so most of the interviews are going to have some sort of a problem set in them. They're going to ask you to solve some problem on the fly, and so you get used to that type of environment is very key.
I want to add to that because we have a grad from last spring, just came and told me day before yesterday that he got an offer from Boeing. I won't tell you how much they're offering because it'll make you fall over. Anyway, but that's exactly what he told me. He's been trying for a year, and he said, and I know it's because of my interviewing skills. Because the first interview I had, I just was terrible. I wouldn't have hired him. Kind of thing. So I think it's really important that you do develop those interviewing comfort level, a comfort level to interview with anybody.
That's very much, they don't give a technical interview. They won't give you questions on the fly. They're interviewing you for your people skills, how you're going to fit in, and yeah, it's very important.
I think one good way to feel comfortable in an interview is to find something that you've done either with an internship or if you were an ASME and you did one of the mini Baja competitions, or there's lots of opportunities now on campus to do those neat little projects. Find one of those things and talk about it. Talk about how much fun you had. Talk about how exciting it was. Talk about how much you love engineering. It's really easy when you do love something to sit and just talk about it. You'll relax a little bit more and you'll come across a lot better. Well, we had some candidates who it was like pulling teeth to get them to talk about anything, and it's you know, if they're an engineer, you want to believe they do it because they like it, and if they can't find one thing that they've done in the last 4 or 5 years that they liked about engineering, it's hard to believe they'd make a good employee and enjoy their job.
You guys have kind of weighed in on most of my question, like internships are important, extracurricular activities, all that stuff. Where's GPA weigh in on job search? Curious.
I've never been asked.
Has anybody ever been asked? Bowie?
Mine wasn't stellar. But
I'm just wondering, you know, can you be a 2.0 engineer and still get a great job, or do you need to be the 3.5 guy and above?
I personally think I interviewed very well, and I got a job with Boeing, and my GPA wasn't the best. I mean, 2.0's pushing it, but you know, I mean, they definitely take some things into consideration.
I think it depends on the company too, and who filters the resumes as they come in. Because I know from Blackhawk, if HR is filtering in the resumes, they're looking at spelling mistakes, they're looking at your GPA, they're looking at the clubs you're affiliated with and all that. And they may not be looking at the same things I would look at when I look through the resumes. But they've already filtered through everything that's come in. So it is important to get a good GPA, but it's not a game stopper. I don't think that it's come up in any interview I've been in. It's more to get your resume past the filters, I think.
That's a good point. I think Matt get scanned out of
Still a little wide out on
it.
Looking kind of a different route, going towards PE, you might be the only one that could kind of answer, but did it seem like it was a major handicap to be an MET over an ME for trying to get your PE?
No. For testing and getting your PE, it's not an easy test, and you have to work pretty hard at it to pass it. I didn't think it was a handicap at all. Where the MET degree can potentially trip you up is if you get your PE, and if you want to move to North Dakota, they may not they may not recognize your PE in the state of North Dakota because you have an MET degree. And that's something to go in with your eyes open. I mean, that there are some states, not many, but a few, that look at what your bachelor's was in, and they require you potentially to have more years of experience before they will recognize your PE. Or in the case of North Dakota, I honestly think that they just said, no, you can't. get PE in our state. I'm like, okay, talk me out of working in another So anyhow, and in our situation, we typically have MEs and METs who are licensed. And so you found ways to work that. You know, you have different people be in charge of jobs depending on the state. Yeah.
I hate to cut anybody off, but we are starting to run out of time. You guys have had some really, really great questions. Thank you. Thank you all for answering them so well. I do have some of that salary information for you guys. Try not to blind our panelists. And I'm sure that, well, I'm not sure, but hopefully you have more questions after the workshop. Talk to any of these guys individually. I do want to introduce Kevin Cook from the MET program here at MSU. I was going to give you some time to just, but if you have something, go ahead.
I think they covered it all. I appreciate you guys coming. If you have other questions about the program that they can't answer, if you want to, some of you, I know a lot of you come to talk to me already. But if you want to come and talk to me, write this down, 283 Roberts Hall, and I can answer any other questions you might have. I think they just leave it at that.
Okay, great. We also have Emily here from the Academic Advising Center.
Hi, I'm one of the advisors over in the University Studies Academic Advising Center. And we don't advise you for your MET major, but we want to make sure that you know we're there and available. We like to help students if you're interested in finding other classes that you can add, ways to add value to your degree. Maybe it's studying a language, maybe it's pursuing a writing minor or something else that you have this passion for MET and engineering, but maybe you have something else that you want to look at. And we love to help students explore those other options on campus. I'm one of 10 advisors, and we take walk-ins, so you don't have to have an appointment, but please come in and see us. We'd be happy to chat with you.
So many great resources at MSU. And I know that students don't know about all of them, and they certainly don't utilize all of them. We all hope they would. But seek out those resources if you have questions. Come by our office, ask questions. We'll point you in the right direction. Now our projector's on.
Well, I can give you a little bit more background about me. Most of you already know, but I graduated from here a long time ago with an MET degree and went to work for a small aerospace company in Seattle. It wasn't so small.
Who will be here at the career fair?
Yes. Never been out of the state of Montana, hardly, and drove into Seattle with all my possessions and thought, oh my gosh, I should go home. But I didn't. So I spent about 10 years out there and then came back here and never left again. But I think that a lot of what they said is very right on. A couple of things I do want to mention before I forget, though. Salary-wise, I think it's very competitive, ME versus MET, as far as the starting salaries and what you do afterwards in most positions. Some places there are a few places that have a discrepancy. Montana starting salaries, no matter whether you're ME or MET, are lower than national, although they're getting better. And somebody asked, what's the prospect of getting a job in Montana? Since I've been here, and most of these people can attest to this, that if you wanted to stay in Montana, Dan was successful, but a lot of us weren't. We wanted to stay in Montana, there weren't any jobs. There are a lot more jobs now in Montana than there were 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. And there are places to go see HDR and Billings, see Brent, go see Emily, Talk to these people, they tell you where the Montana jobs are. And a lot of the Montana companies don't recruit the traditional way. They don't put job postings in the paper. They don't actively recruit because a lot of people want to work there. So you need to find out where they are and who they are and go talk to them.
Network.
Yeah.
There's a lot of small companies in Bozeman that you would never believe were here. That they don't advertise for people to come work for them.
We've got a lot of METs just here in Bozeman working. I mean, this is a small subset of all the METs that could have been here tonight talking that are right here in Bozeman. So, anyway,
That's okay. We just updated this slide from last year, 2010 earnings from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. As you can see, the higher you go up in your education, the less likely you are to be unemployed, more money you're going to make on average. We'll get to our MSU salary data. Keep going. This is from our destinations, our careers survey that we do. We have about 50% response rate. 81.5% of those are employed or in grad school full-time. 10.9 are employed or in grad school part-time. 4.4 are unemployed and looking, and 2.9% aren't even looking. So how would it be in that percentage, right? Yeah, they're seeing exactly. Average salary by year and type of degree. This is campus. This is all the majors. As you can see, there's kind of a little trend right now in our salary. There's always a trend of some kind. We hit a peak and we kind of came back down. The doctoral degree is definitely taking a jump in competitive market. Or maybe more, we had a lot of people answer our survey. In-state versus out-of-state salaries, like Kevin was saying, our in-state salaries are going to be a little bit lower than out-of-state salaries. They're coming up though, and especially in the engineering fields. And then in MET specifically, we had 26 grads in the fall of 2000 and spring of 2010. 14 out of the 26 responded. Average salary $52,564. 12 of the 14 respondents actually gave us their salary, so there was nothing that didn't divulge that. So when you get that call after you graduate, please answer their question. They're not just like putting you on a mailing list or anything. It's good information and it's helpful to the students that are studying in it. Location of our grads, we're doing pretty good keeping our graduates here in Montana as a land grad institution. That's our goal, to keep them here in state. And engineers, they go out, but they don't want to come back. So we're doing a pretty good job on that. 59% of our MSU graduates are remaining in state. So thank you all for coming. Career Fair is February 23rd. Please come, start doing your networking, bring your resume. You don't need to wear a suit and tie, but look the part. And go to our website, our careers website.